Well, I saw another channel had put out some probably clickbait. Maybe he was just mistaken, but nonetheless misinformation telling you that you can skip your Mylar bags when you're preserving your food in buckets. This is misinformation. Don't believe all the clickbait out there. Go through the proper steps to properly preserve your food. You spend a good amount of money on having your food preserved and there when you need it. You don't want to open it up and realize that you spent all that money on food that just rotted because you did not do all of the steps. You took shortcuts. You want to avoid shortcuts. Make sure that you are doing the proper procedures to store your food. I'm going to go over some other types of some other methods of food preservation and how those work, and then I'm going to really address this Mylar bag issue again more directly. So yeah, bucketing is really where he talked about with the Mylar with the Mylar bags and the skipping of that. A lot of times it's a bucket, and then inside that bucket you have a Mylar bag with oxygen absorbers and your food sealed up inside of a sealed bucket. That's one method of preserving food, and he was suggesting you don't need your Mylar bags on the video thumbnail that I saw. Clickbait is what I think that was. But anyway, well, let's talk about the different types of things that you have. You can just seal something up into a bag or a bucket or something like that. Now, sealing it is going to prevent things from getting to it. Depends on what you seal it in. We'll address that a little bit more. But it's to create a barrier. And then vacuum sealing, the idea is, or that could also be with the oxygen absorbers, but trying to create that vacuum of some kind, trying to create a low oxygen environment, is another whole concept there. That's where you take out the air and you seal it. And they say it in pretty good sized print in the food saver manuals. Vacuum sealing is not a substitute for canning. And there's a significant reason why. You know, you'll notice on that vacuum sealing we took out the air, which it changes the effect. Sealing would be good for some of your things like sugars and salts that you don't really want to put them in a low oxygen environment because they will clump together. Now, salt, a lot of times you can break that apart if you're willing to put the effort and the force in there to breaking it apart, but it's better off if you don't vacuum seal it, if you leave it as a powder and just lightly seal those. Vacuum sealing is good for a lot of things that the trouble with vacuum sealing is, yes, it pulls out the air and then you seal it, but what vacuum sealing does not do that canning, jarring, and bottling does is it does not kill the bacteria that is in it. It starves out the oxygen, and that does not kill all the bacteria. Botulism thrives in a low oxygen environment. You just created the perfect home for botulism, which is one of the big killers out there in stored food. So you want to make sure that you kill that, and that's what canning, jarring, bottling does. It kills the bacteria inside of it while it creates that negative pressure and sealing. So it does that extra step, which is a very important step because a lot of things have bacteria in them that needs to be killed off. So things like milk, you definitely don't want to just vacuum seal milk, for example. Vacuum sealing would work great for, batteries, ammunition, all kinds of stuff like that. It'll work also for a lot of spices and things of that nature as well. But when it comes to, your meats or your produce or things of that nature, things that have a fair moisture content in there, you really want to make sure that they go through a canning, jarring, or bottling process. Now, what am I calling the difference on canning and jarring and bottling? Canning and jarring particularly. Bottling, well, that's like bottled soda or whatever, it's something in a bottle. But the main difference between canning and jarring that I have, the jarring is the glass jars that are homemade, and I inventory those differently because they're not good for your bug out bag. You don't want to put a whole bunch of jars in your bug out bag and then throw it around for 3 days and hope they don't break, because chances are they're going to break on your first day and they're going to be attracting animals to you on your next couple days, and they will shred your backpack and you will have a hard time getting any of your stuff to your bug out location. So jarring is good for bugging in. It is also a higher risk for earthquake damage and things of that nature. But jarring is also good for a renewable canning. You can empty out one of those jars, clean it out, and re-jar something else from your garden. While canning, that's the commercial metal cans. They're very durable. Those you can load into your bug out bag. It's better off if you've got something that's more vacuum sealed for your bug out bag, that's lighter weight, not as much liquid content. But they will survive in your bug out bag. So we get the idea here. One just creates a seal, another one creates the low oxygen environment, and another one kills the bacteria as well. So when we deal, this is going back into the bucketing again. Okay, the bucket and the Mylar bags are two different purposes for each. The buckets are porous. They're made out of a plastic material. They have a bunch of microscopic holes, which make them very good for keeping rodents and other large pests out of your food. But when it comes to microbes, and when it comes to, you can keep some of your air pressure okay for a period of time, but it won't be nearly as good as something that's non-porous. That's where the Mylar bag comes in. Mylar bag is non-porous and it's thin, so it doesn't keep your rodents out, but it does keep your smaller microscopic pests and oxygen out of your food for longer. It will help your oxygen absorbers to keep their place for longer on you. Keep that low pressure for the longer period of time. It won't allow it to leak as easily as just a bucket would. So that Mylar bag, it really is worth the trouble and the time and the cost and all the effort needed to have that other layer in there. It's going to be better for the smaller stuff and for keeping the low oxygen. It helps your oxygen absorbers to work. Just having it in the bucket over time, if you're letting that sit for 20 years, there's a chance here it could become more neutralized in its pressures, and that's not good. That's part of the reason. Why even put moisture? Why even put oxygen absorbers in there if it's just not going to keep a good seal the way it needs to? A good bucket should keep a good seal for a good period of time, but it won't be as good as it is with a Mylar bagging. Also, Mylar bags are a liner for that bucket, and any of the food material that could get embedded in the sides of the bucket if it's not in a Mylar bag. So the Mylar bag prevents that as well. Thank you for watching.